America has been consumed by this story. I have told you, Greg, that I'm darkly fascinated by America's fascination with documentaries about murder, podcasts about murder, and video here of what has been a story that everybody's been talking about, where a man named Luigi Mangione, an Ivy League student, murdered in cold blood like an assassin strike with
Allegedly.
a gun, allegedly, the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. And a lot of people are viewing him as a bit of a vigilante on behalf of American outcries around the health industry. So we've got Dylan Scott on with us. He's a senior correspondent and editor for Vox. He's been covering global health for more than a decade, and his latest article is called The Deep Roots of Americans' Hatred of Their Healthcare System. Thank you, Dylan, for joining us. And I guess give us an overview from your vantage point of how it is that you've experienced this story that has grabbed America's interest.
Sure, Dan, thanks for having me. And it has been a surreal few days. I've covered healthcare for more than 10 years, and this still feels kind of like the biggest moment on the beat in a lot of ways, and because largely of that public reaction that you described. It's been like yesterday, it has been sort of darkly humorous in a way. Like yesterday, when we learned his name was Luigi, I saw the anti-Italian memes and are those using Italian stereotypes. And I thought those, my wife's maiden name is Campanella, and they felt kind of absurd. And so it felt safe to laugh. But there's been this other tweet that I have been thinking about ever since I saw it over the weekend that kind of captures the like weird headspace that I find myself in. And this was after the backpack was found in Central Park with the Monopoly money in it. And it was before he was identified, obviously, and he was sort of at the height of his mystery and public appeal, if we want to call it that. And this tweet said, it's like, this guy is like cigarette smoking. He's not going to be good for us in the long term. But in the short term, he's making this look cool. And I feel like that kind of summed up the contradictory feelings that I've been both like picking up in the public response, but also been feeling myself. Because on the one hand, not to be a scold, but human life, I do believe human life is precious, and callousness about murder does make me uncomfortable. But on the other hand, as somebody who's covered healthcare for more than 10 years, I understand why people are so angry. I know the many ways that the healthcare system screws people over. And I know that the stakes are really high for people when they go through those experiences. Like if you're in a serious medical situation, that's one of the most, fraught moments of your life. So I've been trying to hold both of those ideas, and doing so uneasily in my head at the same time over the past few days.
Well, what do you make, though, of the idea that people seem to be rooting for this suspect pretty publicly? It's not okay, but is it understandable based on the reporting that you've been doing for a decade?
Yeah, I mean, it's not okay, but it is. I do understand it. I do think it's like this in a way is connected to trends that are sort of beyond healthcare, in terms of like the crassness that we see in public life and in our society these days. And I do think like the internet makes us more comfortable, maybe saying things that we want to say in like polite conversation. But in terms of the healthcare system itself, like, people have been screwed over by health insurers, and especially when you think back to the days before the Affordable Care Act. People were denied coverage just because they were sick, or they'd have medical, claims for serious medical services, and they would just be denied. And even today, after the ACA has been law, now for more than 10 years, and there are more protections, for example, for people with pre-existing conditions. Health insurers are still up to other hijinks. People just in general feel like the costs of healthcare are too high. And like the thing that I sit here thinking about is like, in a way, I'm not surprised that it was sort of a health insurance executive that was targeted, because I feel like health insurers are the easy villain in our very screwed up healthcare system, because it's sort of like, what did they do? But at the same time, I know, because I have been covering this for so long, that like everybody bears some of the blame, the pharmaceutical companies, even hospitals, even physicians. and certainly health insurers. And so like it's really complicated to untangle, and I don't know what we do with all this anger that people are feeling, and sort of freely expressing after the shooting last week. But I do understand where it comes from, even if it makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
I'm curious. It seemed like we crossed the threshold here, where I don't know if it was the CEO of any other type of Fortune 500 company that could have been murdered and would have the same kind of response that came out here. What impact do you think is going to happen on the health insurance industry as far as any changes because of their fear of, hey, look, the people are pissed. How pissed are they? Well, one of them murdered one of our guys, and the rest of them are like, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's so like paradoxical about this moment is it feels like yes, there's like something is happening. This sort of live nerve has been exposed, and we're having to kind of stare the damage that the broken healthcare system has done to our society in the face. But I don't know like what we do with that. We've got a new in terms of like policy. We've got a new administration, new Congress coming in next year. I'm sure they're going to look at things to do on healthcare policy. Are they going to propose big crackdowns on private health insurers, which like Republicans in general have generally been more favorable towards? I don't know. The conversations about how to change things in pharma and the hospital system are even more difficult. Like part of the reason I think health insurers, to your point, kind of get so much attention and so much vitriol is like I said before, it's like, what do you guys really do? You're just like money, you're moving money around. You're not taking care of anybody. You're not creating new cures that are going
It's
to
a
save people's
mafia.
lives.
It's a mafia. You've heard Bill Burr talk about this. It's a mafia. Like it's business corruption. Pharma bro is a symptom. Pharma bro is a feature, not a bug. When he becomes the most hated man on the internet for charging $750 for a pill that should be $5. Like, you can tell us all the appalling stories. What's the thing that scares you the most? What do you view as the worst of what these mafiosos do?
Right. And I mean, the one I've been fixated on lately is there has been recent reporting on health insurers using like AI driven algorithms to figure out like how to deny people claims, basically, using all of the tools that are at their disposal that apparently this guy was familiar with, if you've seen the reporting about the words written on the bullets. And so, yeah, it is like, one thing that's really interesting if you look at like the polling data about people's experience with health insurance in the US is like by and large, actually, and this does surprise me, Dan, I'll admit it, but it's true. Most people will basically say like they're mostly happy with their healthcare plan. But the catch is you have to remember a lot of those people are probably not using their healthcare that much. They're going to the doctor once a year. Maybe they have like one or two prescriptions, but they're not really using healthcare that much. So for them, it's fine.
Oh, but
one thing,
Gallup found that the percentage of Americans who approve of their available health care is at an all-time low.
Totally. And people don't like this. People think the system is broken. They think the quality of healthcare is getting worse. But let me just follow. The catch, I think, is really interesting. And it's really to your point. It's that the more people use their healthcare, or health insurance, the higher their medical bills, the less satisfied that they are. So it's almost like there's a lot of us kind of living in a delusion that we have good health insurance, but until we try to use it. And then we experience all of the problems with it, and it's really frustrating. And it makes us angry. And I think that has created these attitudes where like people think the healthcare, it's only like 30% of the American public think the healthcare system overall is doing a good job. And yes, as you said, the number of people who think they're getting quality healthcare here in the United States is at an all-time low, which is a really shocking thing because for all of its problems, like if you can get good healthcare in the United States, you can get the best healthcare in the United States. And that has always been true, and it does continue to be true. But that caveat is sort of the whole problem, if you can get it. And too many people can't, and it's so expensive. And that's why we're seeing the reaction that we have.
It's up to the government to fix a broken healthcare system. But in the meantime, how about we don't commit cold-blooded murder against the guy heading a healthcare system? I hate any attempt to justify this murder on any level. Okay, even if you hate big pharma, even if you're being charged $500 for a pill that should cost 10, it doesn't justify this murder. And I hate any implication that it does. I guarantee you this, when the alleged murderer is up on trial, there's going to be no mitigating factor here. The jury's not going to say, well, he killed someone who was head of United Healthcare, so let's be light on him. That's not going to happen, and it shouldn't. And I apologize, that's not a question.
It really isn't, but it's a hell of a diatribe. I salute you. You have rarely had this kind of righteous indignation at the end of a show.
Well, because I'm hearing so much justification for this heinous, cold-blooded murder. No matter who the victim is, let's not justify it on any level.
And I totally agree with you. And that's been, if you read the piece I wrote last week, that was sort of my point. Like, there's not one person, there's not even one industry to blame for all of our problems.
I'll read it for you. I'll read it right now.
Collective failure.
There is not one man nor even one industry responsible for the failures of U.S. healthcare. The finger pointing is a distraction. Every party bears responsibility. The only way forward is to reckon with that collective failure. We need to begin working toward a more rational and just system if we are to have any hope of creating a world in which Thompson's shooting would be truly unimaginable. That's from your story on Vox.com. And I don't know what you find to be the most interesting details that people are finding shocking. Obviously, the cold-blooded mafia-ness of this, but it's also, these are not the identifying traits of someone who murders you in the street. It's whether you want to make Italian stereotype jokes or soprano memes or not, Luigi Mangione doesn't have the background that would suggest that he would do something like this. This seems like a person who is moral about who he's murdering. So I ask you, is he crazy? What are the details here worth examining?
That's a great question, Dan. And that is something I think, journalists struggle with anytime there's a shooting like this. And I'll confess, the where I'm at right now is, yes, he's clearly he doesn't have the sort of typical profile exactly that you would expect of a shooter. But if I'm honest with myself, I try to remember, his mindset is always going to be a bit indecipherable to the rest of us. Even if we can sort of understand sort of his frustrations with the healthcare system, you're not having a normal day when you go out and shoot somebody in the middle of New York City. And so there is a point where I'm like, I don't know how much I care about his individual mindset. What is interesting to me is this public reaction and what it reveals about the failures of the healthcare system, about our frustrations with it. And yeah, I know we will piece, I'm sure, there may be a manifesto. People will obsess over that. And, it'll be interesting to hear the details if there was sort of a specific situation that sort of sent him down this path. But I do try to step back and, remember, you're never going to totally get inside the head of somebody who did this. And so at a certain point, it's futile to even try. And it's better to sort of reflect on what this is saying about us collectively as a whole.
Now, Dylan, one of the things I want to reflect on is that Cavs hoodie that you have on. The Cavs are off to a historic start this season, but
Yep.
they had a bad loss the other night in Miami, and Evan Mobley sprained an ankle, it looks like. What are your thoughts on where the Cavs are going to go this season?
I mean, I came into the season apprehensive. Last year, was it you basically just checked the boxes? We got to the second round, looked okay against Boston, considering we were injured, but that was it. So I was, the win streak to start the season, I was thrilled. It was awesome. I do think Mobley has made a mini leap, at least on the offensive end. It's not like he's going to be an offensive engine, but if he's more competent, if he can hit those threes at a decent clip, and play make a little bit, that unlocks a whole new level for the team. And I will say, you guys will appreciate this, I think. I know everybody's praising Kenny Atkinson. I am thrilled with Kenny Atkinson. But I do think the fact that the defense has held up is a little bit of a credit to JB Bickerstaff. And,
has Mobley taken a mini leap, or is it a step, or has he turned the corner?
It's just a step, I think.
Is it a hop? Is it a hop?
No, there's no hop.
It's not a mini
Dylan,
leap.
You sound ridiculous.
Is it a jump?
See,
he's up a couple points per game.
Is it a jump? Is it a leap? Is it a step?
He's turned a corner. He has not taken a leap. Corner? Dylan, this is my point about the Cavs. When everyone was going crazy about the start, I said, I think they can be better. And everyone said, how? They're already amazing. I said, because Evan Mobley still hasn't taken that leap to be in.
He said he's
bona
taking
fide
a mini
super-
leap.
No,
He
no,
said he's
A
taking
mini leap
leap.
is just a step.
It's just
just
a
a
step.
step.
Yeah.
It's
Turn
just
the
a step.
page.
It's the step in
the
disguise.
page.
Put it on the poll at LeBatardShow. Is a mini leap just a step in disguise? Dylan, thank you for being on with us. We appreciate the time. We appreciate the information. At an advanced age, the greatest close of Greg Cody's career to a show when he has lacked some stamina at
It
the
was
end
great.
of these shows, because back in his day, murder was wrong.
Yeah.
Back in his day, it wasn't okay.
Murder.
To just celebrate somebody in the street killing somebody because you're down with the healthcare cause. And Greg Cody was indignant about it, and he's not here for your normalization
Started yelling
of it.
at Dylan.
And that's right. He was yelling at Dylan about the jokes being made at the internet. This guy's done 10 years of healthcare reporting. Greg Cody hasn't lifted a finger before this righteous indignation. And he was yelling at Dylan about the controversial take of murder's not okay.
He goes on this long spill, and then at the end he says, "And I know that's not a question." Like, well,
It was unbelievable. I was watching a great lawyer, undefeated in trial cases, prowl over a closing argument because he knows he's in the right with the controversial take.
Thank you.
Murder is wrong.
Yeah, well, that's not what I'm hearing from America right now. I'm hearing justification.
Rationalization.
A lot of, on the other
Rationalization.
hand, a lot of people talking about, well, on this hand,
on
I
the
see
other
this.
hand,
On
yeah,
this
on
hand.
one hand's a
That's why-
gun that murdered somebody. On
There
the
is no
other
other
hand, shut
hand.
the fuck up.
that's why we have two hands.
Good
That
point.
is true.
That is not why we have two hands.
For balance? Why do we have two hands?
It's not.
To have another hand.
It's not for equilibrium. The equilibrium of one-handed people is just fine. They don't need the second hand
That's true.
in order.
The fugitive only had one arm.
Whoa.
That was
spoiler
not the
alert.
fugitive. That was That was who the fugitive was framed by.
Yeah.
That's true.
It wasn't
That's a good
me.
point by
It
you.
was the one-armed man.
I can't believe the strength with which Cody got out the controversial opinion of murder is bad.
That's right.
You know what?
That was Hulk Hogan a little bit.
Well,
Like, come on, people.
But I'm not even sure. Look, man, we have normalized this. Whether you're watching documentaries like The Jinx or just there's just been a proliferation of cult and murder documentaries, and murder as a business right now is booming. As a content play, like go look at the top 100 podcasts. It's all sports, comedy, a little bit of self-help, and murder. Just murder sprayed all over the place. People can't get enough in and out of their cars of consuming this, and this one captivated everybody, at least in part. Because there are murders in cold blood every day on the street. This one because of the story behind it, because of what Cody's talking about, the rationalizations around, healthcare is bad, so let me shoot this dude in the street.
Right.
He was delightful. I erred in not asking him, hey, what was it like to chase Josh Allen around in your secondary and stuff? Like, I erred because we were too busy hypnotized by talking about the Masked Singer.
And we had to get to the bottom of who the Wasp is.
That's right. We almost did through all of your hard investigative work there
I
of
think
the
we
game.
named the Wasp.
The game Buzz Off. By the way, if you're listening to God Bless Football, and you should be, the growing and award-winning God Bless Football, Billy is making you tons of money with his bets. Billy keeps going 3-0 because, and not just 3-0. Last night, everything cashed by the half. Like what Billy is giving you in terms of secret insider gambling information on God Bless Football is worthy of a DraftKings renewal.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, we 3-0 yesterday. Also, arguably 4-0, but one of them was a bonus one. It's not something you could actually bet on, and I bet that Noah Eagle was going to end up on one of those Netflix broadcasts. And sure enough, they announced that he was going to be on a Netflix game later that day. So I'm not counting that one towards the record, though. So that one doesn't count. 41-17 on the season, which is kind of crazy. Also, by the way, breaking news, and I can officially tell you now because it's out. God Bless Football was amongst some of the other Meadowlark shows that were nominated for the Sports Podcast Awards. So if you go to sportspodcastgroup.com, you can vote for us for best American football podcast, and we'd appreciate it. We didn't win last year. We won the 2 years previous to that, and there's a lot of competition this year, so we can use all the votes that we can get. So go to podcastgroup.com, and you can vote there for us for Best American Football Podcast.
A lot
Please
of podcasts out there, including Greg Cody's show featuring Greg Cody, who is on this week's episode of your podcast. What are you excited about this week to bring the American public?
We have old but youthful-looking Dave Barry to talk about his holiday gift guide.
Pulitzer Prize winner Dave Barry. That holiday gift guide has been funny for 30 years.
It's a staple. It's wonderful. He always comes up with crazy gifts that are both horrifying and delightful at the same time.
And he's usually a great interview guest.
Yeah,
so
he's really good.
The Greg Cody Show featuring Greg Cody, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. We've got a number of things that I want to get to before the end of the show. We've got a Thursday Thunder that we're about to get to. Did any of you see what is happening? Today is Tuesday, so it wouldn't be a Thursday Thunder. It would be against the spread.
There we go.
Completely different game.
Contract year. Did any of you see Mina and anything Simpsons related last night? Because I didn't see anything. We have managed to blissfully avoid talking about two teams that have a great deal of relevance but aren't very good. And I was just watching the idea of people talking about, the Cowboys playoff chances. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They've lost every home game they've played this year. Like, what are you talking about? I don't want to talk about that game. But what was Mina doing with The Simpsons? I saw that she said it was a career highlight, but I didn't see any of it and don't know what she was doing.
It was an alternate broadcast. So you have like the regular broadcast with Joe Buck, and then you have the Manning cast, and then last year they did a Toy Story broadcast, and this year there was a Simpsons broadcast, and Mina was on the call for the Simpsons broadcast. So she was, in a booth, and she was calling the game as the Simpsons character. Sometimes this is the way the game would work. So everybody was connected to the players that were going on. If you're looking at the screen watching us on video, you can see she was Simpsonized. So that's what Mina Kimes would look like as a Simpsons character. Dan Orlovsky was there as well. And then occasionally, while the plays were going on, they would drop in a Simpsons character. So like Bart would become the quarterback, who one time a touchdown, spoiler alert if you're going to go back and watch the game as the Simpsons version of the game for some reason. Ralph scored a touchdown at one point in time. Lisa had a nice run where fire was coming out of her. So it was a fun time had by all, and they checked in with, Mina and Dan Orlovsky weren't the only ones that became Simpsons characters. They checked in with Stephen A. Smith, who was there as well as a Simpsons character at one point in time.
Did they get the look right on Mina? Because I felt like they scrubbed all of the ethnicity out of Mina. All of a sudden, you've got...
To be fair, none of them look... Like, I looked at the three people on the screen right there. It's supposed to be Mina, Dan Orlovsky, and I don't even know who the third person is. None of them look like any of the people they're supposed to be, so...
Awful.
All right, let's counter Simpsons.
It was not awful. It was good. I thought Mina did great.
Okay.
Greg looks like a Simpsons character. I feel like Simpsonizing you would be pretty easy.
Do you?
Yeah, because you got a look about you. You got a look.
Okay, yeah, all right. Whatever. I didn't think Mina looked Simpsonized. Did not flatter Mina. I didn't think. But I could be wrong.
I mean, it wasn't like a beauty pageant. It was, a football game.
I know.
I was once made into a DuckTale character.
Greg, how do you feel about the last 30 seconds of content you've given this show?
The last 30 seconds?
Yeah, you just sort of whimsically parasoled into the conversation and offered nothing.
Well, whimsy, apparently, I offered, since I whimsically parasailed in. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to offer. You're talking about caricature. Simpson. Nobody looks good as a Simpson character.
Is this Stephen A. Smith? That can't be Stephen A.
That's
Smith.
Stephen A.
Come on.
That's Prince.
You got nothing but the forehead right. You got nothing else right. Let's counter Simpsons programming with our own beefcake. Let's go out to Tony poolside. It is time for Tony's Top 5. Tony coming off a very successful weekend. MMA Hangout is becoming more and more popular. He is crushing it on Saturday nights around the fights. What do you have for us today for our Top 5 list on your football observations, Tony?
Dano, no OLI. As you can see, this is kind of a chill day today. We've had a long weekend. We had the amazing Sunday service brought to you by the boys at God Bless Football. We had MMA Hangout. We had Sunday Night Live last night. So a plethora of things that we got into this weekend. So today, chilling by the pool. No OLI. We're going to go straight top 5. Dano, you ready?
I am in just a second. I can say what I'm about to say and be accurate, right? There is no place in the United States where the temperature is as good as where Tony is right now, correct? California's cold in the morning. California can get cold. There is nothing in December like what Tony is doing right now for winter, which is it is lovely out there. It's beautiful out there. And Tony's ready to give you his football top 5.
Well, to be honest with you, Dan, it's not just Miami. In Arizona right now, it's about 75 degrees during the daytime. At night, it gets cold, but right now, I can sit by my pool.
That's fine. It does. In the morning, at night, it gets cold in California and Arizona. It does
Virgin
not
Islands
here.
are great now, too.
I said
that is
United
US.
States.
US
Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
He didn't say British.
Yeah. Key West is pretty nice.
Contiguous, Dan.
South Florida. Yes, thank you. Go ahead. Number 5, Tony.
Number 5, Dano, I'm actually going to kick it out to you for a dealer's choice. Okay, Dan, you're my dealer. Here's the dealer's choice. Coach of the Year update. I'm going to give you 3 names. Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, Mike Tomlin. Dealer's choice. Who do you pick?
I guess I'd have to take Dan Campbell just because they're a historic laughing stock.
Oh, I got a different one. Jim Harbaugh.
Ooh, okay, Greg. Oh.
That's
So
not
your
dealer's
fifth
choice.
observation is asking Dan who he thinks the coach of the year is?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Is
what
that a
happened.
problem?
That is number 4.
Number 4. Eagles keep winning, but there's trouble in paradise between number 1 and number 11. Dan, I don't know if you saw Brandon Graham yesterday said that there was a little bit of a situation going on in the relationship with QB1 and wide receiver 1. I don't like that.
He said more than that. He said that Jalen is trying and that AJ has to adjust parts of how he receives things. Like that was an unbelievable bit of dirty laundry to have. Is the guy who said that even playing, or is he injured?
I think he's injured.
I mean, you're coming off IR just to create a controversy for your team during an interview. That is not good work by that guy.
You're not even in the building.
Number 3.
Number 3, como coño. Okay, and Dan, you could translate for the audience. Como carajo tú puedes tocar la pelota on that punt? The punt got blocked, and you touch it trying to pick it up. What are you doing? Not only did you cost me money, you cost me fantasy position, you cost me everything, 27. Jerry Jones his hand was shaking at the booth when they panned over to Jerry during that situation. Dan, that's the stupidest thing I've seen in a long time.
How would you translate, Billy, como coño? How coño is an all-purpose Spanish.
Yeah.
Como coño, como carajo is easier.
Literally, there's multiple ways to translate como coño because como could be how, and it can also be eat. Coño
Yes.
can be a number of things.
Spanish, a confusing language.
Yeah.
Greg, what can you tell us about last night's game and the stupidity that you saw at the end of it that conjured memories of Leon Lett on Thanksgiving?
It was awful, mainly because I had picked Dallas to win outright. I picked them for my upset of the week in the Miami Herald. I had it. Dallas should have won that game. How do you blow that on a punt? How do you not wind up with a ball after a blocked punt? I hadn't seen that in years. I don't know when's the last time I saw that. It was outrageous. Jerry Jones should have fired that guy right on the spot. He should have run. Whoever touched that ball, I don't recall his name. Jerry Jones should have run down from his suite onto the sideline, onto the field, and fired that man who caused that.
Mm-hmm. Number 2, Tony.
Number 2, Dan, he's not top 10 in passing yards. He's not top 5 in touchdowns thrown. But if you took Josh Allen off the Bills, they'd be 4-13. That tells me one thing, Dano.
You're going to make him
Tells
the
me one
MVP.
thing. Starts with 3 letters.
Yeah.
Sorry, exactly right. Thank you, Dan. MVP for Josh Allen. I think this is a record. I've named somebody the MVP in 5 straight weeks on Tony's Top 5.
Put it on the poll, please, at
Each one being
LeBatard
different.
Show. Does MVP start with 3 letters at LeBatard Show?
What does it end with?
Wow.
Number 1.
Number 1, Dan. Jags, Titans. I didn't think you would have this to lead off to be the number 1, but Jags, Titans, 10-6. The game being played in every TV, in every sports bar in hell. Speaking of hell, Dan, our Pryles. Yes. Those were Tony's top 5 for week 14. Every TV in every sports bar in hell is playing Jags Titans 10-6 with Mac Jones and Will Levis.
That one was a horror. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate your top 5. Brought to you by the haters.
What's up, everybody? It's Mike, and it's the holiday season. And the holiday season means family gatherings. You're going to be hosting your family, opening up your doors to, let's face it, potentially some problems. There's always family disagreements and things up for debate. Well, let me tell you something that's not up for debate. The great taste of Miller Lite. In these polarizing times, it's good to have something that we can find general consensus on, and that is that beautiful white can, Miller Lite. Is awesome. It makes any time a Miller time, and it's got tastes that you know that you can depend on. A beer that is brewed for people who actually like the taste of beer. And let's not forget, simple ingredients and the fact that Miller Lite is only 96 calories, folks. That's right, and just 3.2 grams per 12 ounces. Making memories at year-end gatherings, I ask you? Well, make those memories taste like Miller time. Go to MillerLite.com/Dan and find delivery options near you. Or you can pick up some Miller Lite pretty much anywhere that they sell beer. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer.
What's up, everybody? Tony here. Do you love sports betting as much as I do? Wish you can get that extra edge? Well, I've got great news for you. Masterclass, which I love, by the way, just dropped Bet Smart, Top Sports Betting Strategies, a game-changing course taught by GOATs, taught by the pros, such as Nick Kostos, Captain Jack Andrews, Joe Fotenbaugh. Learn directly from the pros as they share insider secrets on managing your bankroll, spotting hidden gems, and avoiding those rookie mistakes that could cost you big. I'm always looking for useful tips and tricks to improve my bankroll and just to be a better bettor in general. That's why I took the Bet Smart Top Sports Betting Strategies class. I consider myself a pretty confident bettor when I hear Rob Pizzola, when I hear Captain Jack break down the pros and the cons of flat staking, of protecting your bankroll against bad bets, a lot of different things that we don't think about as regular bettors. I realized I wasn't betting to my full potential, and that's why I love taking this class with Masterclass. Masterclass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50%. Head over to masterclass.com/DLB for the current offer. That's up to 50% off. Masterclass.com/DLB. Masterclass.com/DLB. And remember, all sports betting involves risk, and you're responsible for complying with all sports betting laws in your jurisdiction.